By sunrise, Blackstone Global was already collapsing. The first leaked document appeared at exactly 6:12 a.m., then another, then 50 more, confidential shareholder records, secret surveillance archives, internal executive emails, hospital transfer payments, fake death authorizations, everything. News stations exploded across every screen in America. Blackstone Global under federal scrutiny. Billion-dollar cover-ups exposed. Who is Evelyn Cole? Inside Blackstone headquarters, nobody looked calm anymore. Executives rushed through hallways, clutching phones with shaking hands, while assistants cried quietly near elevators. Stock prices crashed by the second. $3 billion vanished before noon, and Daniel Blackstone stood completely still inside his office, watching it happen. Rain hammered violently against the skyscraper windows behind him. A young executive burst through the doors without knocking. Daniel, federal investigators are requesting immediate access to archived company files. Daniel didn't move. Another executive entered seconds later. Multiple board members are resigning. Then another. The media found the hospital connection. Another. Someone leaked level 7. That finally made Daniel turn slowly. For the first time in decades, fear appeared in his eyes. Who leaked the archives? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. The room fell silent as giant television screens suddenly switched to breaking news footage showing Evelyn Cole standing outside Blackstone Global in the rain the previous night. Humiliated, shoved, ignored. Now the entire world was watching the clip, and the public was furious. Daniel stared at the screen silently, then finally whispered, "She planned this." One terrified executive shook his head nervously. "No, this isn't revenge anymore." He swallowed hard. "This is war." Suddenly, emergency alarms echoed across the executive floor. A security officer rushed inside. "Sir, internal servers are being remotely accessed." Daniel's face darkened instantly. "From where?" The officer hesitated, then answered quietly. "Inside the building." Panic erupted. Executives immediately started shouting over each other. "Shut down the network. Lock every floor. Find Evelyn Cole." But another terrifying realization hit seconds later. Nobody had seen Evelyn leave the building. The security cameras lost her nearly 40 minutes ago. It was as if she vanished inside Blackstone Global itself. Daniel suddenly grabbed the edge of the marble desk, because deep down, he already knew where she went. The penthouse, the one place she could destroy him completely. Meanwhile, 40 floors above the collapsing executive level. A private elevator opened silently into darkness. Evelyn Cole stepped out slowly, calm, focused, terrifyingly composed. And for the first time in 23 years, she was finally standing outside her son's door. The private hallway outside penthouse level 57 felt nothing like the rest of Blackstone Global. No alarms, no shouting, no executives panicking, just silence. Cold, perfect, manufactured silence. Evelyn stepped carefully across the marble hallway, while soft piano music echoed faintly through hidden speakers overhead. The entire floor looked less like a residence and more like a controlled sanctuary. Private guards stood outside the penthouse entrance, but unlike the others downstairs, these guards already knew exactly who she was. One slowly lifted his hand toward his earpiece. "Sir," Evelyn calmly interrupted him. "Don't." The guard hesitated, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he obeyed, because the woman standing before him didn't feel dangerous in a loud way. She felt dangerous in a calm way, the kind that made people nervous without understanding why. Evelyn slowly looked toward the massive penthouse doors. 23 years. 23 years stolen from her. Then finally, she pushed the doors open. The penthouse was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Soft jazz music playing quietly. Luxury furniture. Private security systems. Shelves filled with books, photographs, awards. And sitting near the giant glass windows was a young man reading quietly. He looked up slowly, and Evelyn's world stopped instantly. Same eyes, same expression, Same small scar beneath his chin from when he fell off his bike at age 5. Her son, older now, but unmistakably hers, Ethan. The book slowly slipped from his hands as he stared at her. Confusion crossed his face immediately, because something about the woman standing in front of him felt painfully familiar. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Her entire body trembled now, not from fear, from 23 years of grief collapsing all at once. Ethan, her voice cracked softly. The young man stood slowly, polite, cautious, but distant. I think you have the wrong room. That sentence shattered her instantly, because he didn't recognize her. Of course he didn't. Why would he? Someone spent 23 making sure he never would. Evelyn stepped closer carefully, tears already forming again. You used to hate thunderstorms, she whispered. Ethan frowned slightly. You would hide under the kitchen table. Whenever lightning started, the young man's expression changed faintly, confusion deepening, because somehow the memory sounded familiar. But before Ethan could respond, the penthouse doors suddenly burst open behind Evelyn. Daniel Blackstone entered with armed security, breathing heavily, furious, terrified. Get away from him. The entire penthouse froze. Ethan looked between them in confusion now. Dad, what's going on, Dad? The word hit Evelyn harder than any betrayal yet. Daniel slowly stepped forward. She's dangerous. Evelyn looked at him in disbelief. Dangerous after everything he did? Ethan's voice grew uneasy. Who is she? Silence swallowed the room. Daniel answered immediately. Nobody. But Evelyn finally looked directly at her son and quietly said the sentence she waited 23 years to speak. I'm your mother. The room exploded into silence. Ethan stared at her blankly, then laughed once in disbelief. No. Daniel stepped forward instantly. She's lying. But Evelyn pulled a small photograph from her coat slowly. A faded picture. Tiny Ethan asleep in her arms as rain tapped softly against an apartment window years ago. Ethan's expression changed immediately, because he had seen that photograph before, hidden, locked away. Inside Daniel's private office, Daniel noticed the recognition instantly, and panic crossed his face. Ethan. But the young man slowly looked back at Evelyn now, shaken, confused, emotionally cornered, then quietly asked, Why do I remember your face? The penthouse remained frozen in silence. Why do I remember your face? Ethan's question hung heavily in the air while rain crashed violently against the skyscraper windows behind them. Daniel Blackstone looked genuinely alarmed now. Ethan, listen to me. No. For the first time, his son interrupted him. Ethan's eyes never left Evelyn now. Confusion, fear, recognition. Something inside him was beginning to crack open. Daniel stepped closer carefully. She's manipulating you. Evelyn laughed softly through tears. Manipulating him? She slowly held up the faded childhood photograph again. You kept pictures of me hidden in your office. Daniel's jaw tightened instantly, and Ethan noticed. That tiny reaction told him more than words ever could. The young man slowly looked toward Daniel. Why would you hide pictures of her? Silence. Daniel had no immediate answer, because there wasn't one. Then suddenly, another voice echoed quietly from the penthouse entrance, because he knew this day would come eventually. Everyone turned sharply. An older woman stood near the doorway, trembling slightly. Gray coat, hospital badge clipped inside her purse, and the second Evelyn saw her face, her breathing stopped. Natalie Brooks, the night nurse from the hospital 23 years ago, the woman who disappeared immediately after Ethan's death. Daniel's expression darkened instantly. You shouldn't be here. Natalie ignored him. Because after 23 years, she looked exhausted carrying the truth. Ethan frowned in confusion. You know her? Natalie looked directly at him now, tears already filling her eyes. I used to sing to you when you couldn't sleep. The room fell silent again. Ethan stared at her blankly, but something deep inside his memory shifted painfully. Fragments, voices, a lullaby, rain tapping against hospital windows. Meanwhile, Daniel looked furious now. Natalie, leave. But the woman slowly shook her head. No, pause. I already helped ruin one family. That sentence changed everything. Evelyn stepped forward slowly. You knew. Natalie broke instantly. I tried to stop it. Daniel snapped, be careful, but Natalie was done being afraid. Her voice trembled violently now. The board threatened Daniel after Ethan got sick. Ethan frowned immediately. Sick? Natalie slowly looked toward him, then quietly whispered, you were never dying. Silence detonated across the penthouse. Evelyn froze. Ethan froze. Even Daniel stopped moving. Natalie's tears finally spilled openly now. The illness was exaggerated to pressure investors during the merger. Evelyn looked physically sick. No. Natalie nodded slowly. The hospital reports were manipulated. Daniel exploded immediately. That is not what happened. But nobody believed him anymore, because panic had already exposed too much. Natalie looked directly at Ethan again. The night your mother lost consciousness after the funeral? Pause. Daniel signed emergency guardianship papers. Ethan staggered backward slightly. What? Natalie's voice cracked. They changed your identity. The young man's breathing became uneven now. No, you became Ethan Blackstone. Daniel stepped forward desperately. I did what I had to do. Evelyn snapped instantly. You stole him. Daniel finally lost control. I saved him. The penthouse exploded into chaos. Rain, thunder, emotion. 23 years of lies finally collapsing in real time. Then suddenly, Ethan shouted louder than both of them. Stop. The room froze instantly, because for the first time all night, the young man looked terrified. Not angry, terrified. He slowly looked at Daniel, the man who raised him, the man he trusted, the only father he ever knew, then toward Evelyn, the woman whose face somehow haunted memories he couldn't explain. His voice shook badly now. Tell me the truth. Nobody answered immediately, because the truth was far uglier than Ethan could imagine. Then quietly, Natalie whispered the sentence that shattered him completely. Your mother never abandoned you. Ethan's face crumbled instantly, and deep inside himself, something finally broke. Blackstone Global was imploding. Every financial network in America was covering the scandal live. Helicopters circled above the skyscraper. Reporters flooded the streets below. Federal vehicles lined the entrances. And inside the executive boardroom, the people who once worshipped Daniel Blackstone were finally turning against him. The atmosphere felt poisonous. Nobody trusted anyone anymore. One executive slammed a confidential report onto the conference table. 7 more investors pulled out this afternoon. Another snapped back immediately. The stock lost another 11% in the last hour. A third executive whispered nervously. The media found the offshore accounts. Silence swallowed the room, because everyone knew what that meant. Criminal investigations. Prison. Daniel stood near the massive boardroom windows again, motionless, like a man watching his empire drown in slow motion. Then finally, Vanessa Pierce spoke carefully. We need to remove you temporarily. The room froze instantly. Daniel slowly turned toward her. What did you just say? Vanessa swallowed hard, but continued anyway. If the board publicly distances itself from you now, maybe we can still save Blackstone. Daniel stared at her coldly. You think sacrificing me saves the company? No, Vanessa whispered. I think it buys us time. Several executives quietly nodded, and that was the moment Daniel realized the truth. They were abandoning him, just like he abandoned everyone else years ago. One older board member finally spoke up. The real problem isn't Evelyn anymore. Pause. It's Ethan. Daniel's face darkened instantly. What about him? The executive pushed a folder slowly across the table. Inside, leaked surveillance screenshots, identity transfer documents, guardianship records, hospital inconsistencies, and one headline already spreading online. Did Blackstone Global hide a child for 23 years? The room became deathly silent. Vanessa looked physically sick. If Ethan speaks publicly. Nobody finished the sentence, because everyone already understood. Blackstone would die overnight. Daniel slowly sat down for the first time all day, exhausted, aging visibly by the minute, then quietly muttered, You don't understand what's coming. One executive frowned. What does that mean? Daniel looked toward the storm outside, then answered softly, Evelyn doesn't want money anymore. Pause. She wants destruction. Meanwhile, 47 floors above them, Ethan sat alone inside the penthouse library while rain rolled softly down the giant windows nearby. His hands trembled while staring at the faded childhood photograph Evelyn showed him earlier. Him asleep in her arms, a memory he somehow felt without remembering. Across the room, Evelyn stood silently watching him, giving him space, not forcing anything. Because after 23 years, she understood something important. You cannot demand love from someone raised inside a lie. Ethan finally looked up quietly. Why didn't you come for me? That question nearly destroyed her. Evelyn slowly sat across from him. They made me believe you were gone. Ethan looked away immediately, pain crossing his face. My whole life. Pause. Was fake? Evelyn's voice broke softly. No. She looked at him carefully. You were real. The young man lowered his head, trying not to collapse emotionally. But downstairs, inside Blackstone's underground security, someone else was watching them through hidden surveillance feeds. A man in a dark suit quietly inserted a flash drive into the server system, uploading classified files. Then he whispered softly into a phone. I found Evelyn. Pause. Yes. Another pause. She's with the boy. The caller on the other end answered coldly. Then proceed. The man looked back towards the surveillance screens one last time and reached slowly inside his jacket, revealing a concealed handgun. Rain rolled softly down the penthouse windows while silence consumed the room. Ethan still sat across from Evelyn, but now the distance between them felt unbearable. Not physical distance, emotional distance. 23 years of stolen memories sitting between them like a wall, neither knew how to cross. The faded childhood photograph trembled slightly in Ethan's hands. He kept staring at it, at himself sleeping peacefully in Evelyn's arms, at the softness in her eyes, at something he never once saw in Daniel Blackstone's face, love, real love. And somehow, that terrified him more than anything else. Evelyn watched him carefully, not pushing, not rushing, because deep down, she already knew the truth. Getting her son back would not happen in one emotional moment. Daniel had shaped Ethan's entire reality, every memory, every belief, every version of the past. Then finally, Ethan spoke quietly. If what you're saying is true, pause. Then why would he lie to me? Evelyn looked toward the storm outside briefly. Because the answer was ugly. He needed control. Ethan immediately shook his head. No. His voice grew stronger now. He raised me. Pause. He protected me. The words hurt Evelyn visibly, but she forced herself to stay calm. Did he? Ethan stood suddenly, frustrated, confused, emotionally overwhelmed. You don't understand anything about my life, the room echoed with his voice. And somewhere deep inside herself, Evelyn realized the hardest truth of all. Her son wasn't waiting to be rescued. He was defending the man who stole him. Ethan paced toward the massive windows now, rain and city lights reflecting across his face. My whole life, he muttered. He told me my mother abandoned me after I got sick. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, because hearing Daniel's lies spoken out loud felt unbearable. Then Ethan turned sharply toward her again. Were you even looking for me? That question nearly shattered her. But before Evelyn could answer, a hidden bookshelf door inside the penthouse suddenly clicked open. Both of them froze, because Ethan clearly didn't know the room, even had a hidden passage. A man slowly stepped from the darkness, holding a handgun fitted with a suppressor. Black suit, corporate security badge, cold eyes. Evelyn immediately stood, shielding Ethan instinctively. The man calmly raised the weapon toward her. Miss Cole, he said quietly, you were supposed to leave the building hours ago. Ethan stared in disbelief. What the hell is this? The gunman ignored him completely. His focus stayed locked on Evelyn. Then, suddenly, another voice echoed behind him from the hidden hallway. Put the gun down. Everyone turned sharply. Daniel Blackstone stepped from the shadows, breathing heavily, furious. The gunman looked confused. Sir, I received authorization. Daniel's voice dropped dangerously low. Not from me. The tension inside the penthouse became suffocating instantly, because for the first time,
Daniel looked genuinely afraid for Ethan.
the gunman hesitated. Wrong move. Daniel suddenly lunged forward violently. The gun fired. Bang. Glass exploded across the penthouse. Ethan shouted in panic. Security alarms erupted instantly throughout the floor, and Evelyn watched in horror as Daniel tackled the gunman directly into the hidden hallway wall. The handgun skidded across the marble floor. Then suddenly, the attacker screamed because Daniel had grabbed him by the throat with terrifying force.
Who sent you?
The man choked violently, but before he could answer, another gunshot echoed. Bang! Everyone froze. The attacker collapsed instantly, blood spreading slowly across the marble floor beneath him. And standing at the penthouse entrance was Vanessa Pierce, holding the smoking handgun, breathing hard. The room fell into stunned silence. Even Daniel looked shocked. Vanessa slowly lowered the weapon, then quietly whispered he was going to talk. The penthouse descended into chaos. Security alarms screamed across every floor of Blackstone Global. Red emergency lights pulsed violently through the room, while rain exploded against shattered glass windows nearby. And in the middle of it all, a body lay motionless across the marble floor, blood slowly spreading beneath him. Ethan stood frozen, unable to breathe, because until this moment, his life had always felt controlled, safe, predictable. But now, everything around him looked terrifyingly real. Daniel slowly released the dead gunman's collar while staring at Vanessa in disbelief. You killed him. Vanessa's hands trembled slightly around the handgun. He was going to expose us. Us. That single word changed the atmosphere instantly. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Us. Vanessa realized her mistake too late. Daniel stood slowly now, cold rage building behind his expression. What did you do? Vanessa looked genuinely panicked for the first time. Daniel. No. He stepped toward her dangerously. What did you authorize? Ethan stared between them in confusion. What is happening? Nobody answered him immediately, because suddenly, the truth was becoming bigger than all of them. Vanessa finally snapped. I was protecting Blackstone. Daniel exploded. By sending someone to murder Ethan's mother? The penthouse fell silent instantly. Ethan's face drained completely, because Daniel's words confirmed everything. The attack was real, planned, internal. Evelyn slowly looked toward Vanessa. You ordered the hit? Vanessa shook her head desperately. You don't understand. Then suddenly, she pointed directly at Ethan. He's the reason this entire company exists. Silence. Daniel's face changed instantly. Stop talking. But Vanessa was spiraling now. No. Her breathing became uneven. We've spent 23 years protecting him. Ethan frowned in confusion. Protecting me from what? Nobody answered, and that silence terrified him more than the gunshots. Then, finally, Vanessa whispered the truth. The Blackstone fortune was never Daniel's. Evelyn froze instantly. Daniel closed his eyes, because he knew what was coming next. Vanessa looked directly at Ethan now. Your grandfather created a trust before he died. Ethan stared blankly. What trust? The original Blackstone Inheritance Trust. Pause. And legally. Vanessa's voice cracked. The empire belongs to you. The penthouse felt like it tilted sideways. Ethan looked completely lost now. No. Daniel stepped forward immediately. She doesn't know what she's saying. Yes, I do, Vanessa screamed back. The board needed Ethan alive because the inheritance legally transfers to him at age 25. Evelyn slowly backed away in horror, because suddenly, everything made sense. The fake death, the hidden identity, the controlled penthouse, the surveillance, the lies. Ethan wasn't hidden out of love. He was hidden because he was worth billions, a living key to the entire empire. Daniel looked shattered now, because the one secret he protected for 23 years had finally escaped. Ethan's voice trembled badly. So my entire life. Pause was about money? Nobody answered, because the answer was yes. Then, suddenly, The penthouse television switched on automatically. Breaking news flooded every screen. Blackstone Global stock collapses. Federal raid authorized. Multiple executives under investigation. Vanessa's face lost color. No. Daniel turned toward the screen slowly, because he understood immediately. Someone inside Blackstone had betrayed all of them. And downstairs, deep inside Blackstone's underground server room, a mysterious figure quietly uploaded the final confidential archive files to federal authorities, including Ethan's false death records, inheritance documents, surveillance archives, internal assassination authorizations. The upload bar hit 100%. Then the figure smiled softly and whispered, "Game over." Blackstone Global was dying in real time. News helicopters circled overhead. Reporters screamed into cameras below, and inside the building, panic spread faster than fire. Employees rushed through hallways carrying boxes, hard drives, confidential folders, anything they thought could save them before investigators arrived. But it was already too late, because every hidden Blackstone secret was now public. Meanwhile, inside the penthouse, nobody moved. The televisions continued flashing breaking news headlines across the walls. Federal warrants issued. Blackstone executives under investigation. Billion-dollar fraud scandal explodes. Ethan stared silently at the screens while his entire identity collapsed around him. His life, his father, his name, none of it felt real anymore. Daniel slowly stepped toward him. "Ethan." But the young man backed away immediately. That hurt Daniel more visibly than any investigation ever could. "Don't," Ethan whispered. Daniel froze, because for the first time in 23 years, his son looked afraid of him. Vanessa quietly lowered herself into a chair nearby, still shaken from the shooting, still gripping the handgun loosely. Then suddenly, every screen inside the penthouse switched again. Live security footage. Federal agents storming the Blackstone lobby. Employees screaming, executives attempting to flee. One board member collapsing while cameras flashed around him. The empire was imploding publicly now. Daniel stared at the footage silently, then muttered, "They moved too fast." Evelyn looked toward him sharply. "You knew this was coming?" Daniel laughed once bitterly. "No, pause. I just didn't think they'd turn on me this quickly." Then suddenly, a loud electronic voice echoed throughout the building. "Federal agents. This building is now under government authority." The penthouse lights flickered violently. Emergency lockdown activated. Magnetic doors sealed automatically. Ethan looked panicked. "What happens now?" Nobody answered, because nobody knew anymore. Meanwhile, downstairs, inside Blackstone's executive boardroom, federal agents tore through confidential records while terrified executives sat under armed supervision. One older executive finally broke under pressure. It wasn't Daniel's idea originally. The lead investigator looked up immediately. What wasn't? The executive swallowed hard, the inheritance concealment. Silence filled the room. Then quietly, he whispered, "The board created it." Meanwhile, back upstairs, Daniel stood near the shattered penthouse windows, staring at the storm outside. And for the first time, he looked exhausted beyond repair. Evelyn slowly approached him. "You could told me the truth." Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on the city below. "No." Pause. "You would have taken Ethan away." Evelyn looked at him in disbelief. "He was my son." Daniel finally turned toward her. "And he was the only thing I had left." That sentence hit harder than Evelyn expected, because deep down, she realized something horrifying. Daniel may have started as a thief, but somewhere along the way, he truly began believing Ethan belonged to him. Then suddenly, the penthouse doors exploded open. Federal agents stormed inside with weapons raised. "Don't move!" Ethan flinched violently. Vanessa immediately dropped the handgun. Daniel slowly raised his hands. The lead federal investigator stepped forward carefully, then looked directly at Ethan. His voice softened slightly. "Ethan Blackstone." Pause, or Ethan Cole. The young man looked terrified. The investigator continued carefully. "You're going to need to come with us." Ethan looked toward Daniel, then Evelyn, then the shattered city outside, and quietly asked the one question nobody in the room was ready to answer. Who am I supposed to trust now? The penthouse drowned in flashing red emergency lights. Federal agents filled every entrance. Weapons raised. Rain crashing violently against shattered glass windows while helicopters circled above Manhattan like vultures waiting for a corpse. And standing in the middle of it all, Ethan Cole looked completely broken. Who am I supposed to trust now? The question silenced the room. Even the federal agents hesitated, because nobody there had a clean answer. Not Evelyn, not Daniel, not Vanessa, not even Blackstone itself. The lead investigator slowly stepped toward Ethan. "We're here to protect you." Daniel laughed bitterly from across the room. "Protect him?" He looked directly at the agents now. "You people only showed up after the Empire started bleeding." The investigator ignored him, but Evelyn noticed something important immediately. Daniel wasn't acting afraid anymore. He was acting angry, and there was a difference, a dangerous one. Ethan slowly backed away from everyone in the room, his breathing uneven, his hands shaking. Every person around him suddenly felt like a stranger wearing familiar faces. Then quietly, he looked at Daniel. "Did you ever love me?" The question hit the penthouse harder than the gunshots earlier. Daniel froze completely, because for 23 years, he prepared for investigations, for betrayal, for prison, for exposure, but not for that question. Not from Ethan, not from the boy he raised. The billionaire slowly stepped forward. No power in his face anymore. No executive mask. No billionaire confidence. Just exhaustion. "I loved you the only way I knew how." Ethan's eyes watered instantly. "That's not an answer." Daniel stopped moving, and deep down, he knew Ethan was right. Meanwhile, across the room, Vanessa Pierce sat trembling silently while federal agents confiscated phones, hard drives, and weapons around her. But something about Vanessa felt wrong. Too nervous. Too distracted. Evelyn noticed immediately, because while everyone else focused on Ethan, Vanessa kept toward the hidden bookshelf passage behind the penthouse wall, like she was waiting for something, or someone. Then suddenly, every television screen inside the penthouse went black, static. The federal agents instantly grabbed weapons again. Who touched the system? Nobody answered. Then a distorted voice echoed across every speaker inside the penthouse. "Daniel Blackstone." The room froze. "You should buried everything deeper." The voice sounded digitally altered, unknown, cold. The televisions flickered back on. But now, instead of news coverage, private surveillance footage appeared. Not from Blackstone. Older, much older. Date stamp, 24 years earlier. A young Daniel Blackstone stood inside a private office arguing violently with an older man. Ethan frowned immediately, because the older man looked familiar. Same eyes, same face structure. Then the screen identified him. Richard Blackstone, founder of Blackstone Global, Daniel's father. The room became deathly silent. On screen, Richard Blackstone slammed a folder across the desk furiously. "You are not ready to run this company." Young Daniel snapped back immediately. "You were ready at my age. That was different." "No," Daniel shouted. "You just never trusted me." Then suddenly, Richard pointed toward another document on the desk, one labeled Blackstone Family Trust, and beneath it, primary heir, unborn male descendant. Ethan froze instantly, because suddenly, the truth became far bigger than anyone imagined. The inheritance plan existed before he was even born. On screen, Richard continued angrily. "If anything happens to me, the company transfers through bloodline succession." Young Daniel looked horrified. "So I inherit nothing," Richard answered coldly. "You inherit responsibility." Then the footage cut abruptly. Silence swallowed the penthouse. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because everyone finally understood something terrifying. Daniel didn't steal Blackstone out of greed alone. He spent his entire life trying to prove himself worthy of an empire. His own father never trusted him to control. And Ethan was born into a war before he even existed. Evelyn slowly looked toward Daniel. For the first time, she saw something deeper than corruption. Damage. Generational damage. But before anyone could speak, the mysterious, distorted voice returned again through the speakers. "You still haven't told them the worst part, Daniel." Daniel's face lost all color instantly. Real fear, the kind Evelyn had never seen before. The investigator stepped forward sharply. "Who is this?" The voice ignored him completely. Then another hidden surveillance file opened automatically across every screen. This time, hospital footage. But not the footage Evelyn already saw. New footage. Restricted footage. The timestamp read, 3:14 a.m., night of Ethan's funeral. Evelyn frowned instantly, because she remembered being unconscious that night. On screen, two men wheeled a small coffin through a private hospital loading dock. Daniel stood nearby, signing documents. Then suddenly, the coffin moved. The entire penthouse froze. Ethan stared at the screen in horror. No. On screen, a tiny hand weakly pushed against the inside of the coffin lid. Evelyn's knees nearly gave out beneath her, because her son was alive. Inside the coffin, the room exploded into chaos. Federal agents shouting, Vanessa crying, Ethan stumbling backward in shock. But Daniel? Daniel looked destroyed, completely destroyed. Then finally, the hidden footage revealed the final horrifying detail. The second man, helping Daniel move the coffin, stepped into full camera view. And Evelyn stopped breathing instantly, because she recognized him. The lead federal investigator standing inside the penthouse, the same man supposedly helping them now. 23 years younger, working with Daniel. The investigator slowly looked toward the screens in horror, because everyone in the room now understood the truth at the same time. The corruption never stayed inside Blackstone. It reached the government too. And suddenly, every federal agent inside the penthouse raised weapons at each other.